everyone. Thank you guys for joining our webinar today. I'll have Brian to kick us off.
Thank you, Cathryn. Good afternoon. This is Brian Kelly. It's my pleasure to welcome you back to our webinar series. For those of you new to MarketX, we are a tech-enabled investment manager and end-to-end fintech platform that provides our clients with a streamlined way to gain access to, evaluate, and exit opportunities in early growth and late-stage private technology companies. The firm was founded by Cathryn in 2015 with a broader mission to address growing liquidity needs and access inequity within the venture asset class. We have worked with more than 300 family offices, high net worth individuals, and institutions over the last 7 years, and collectively have facilitated north of 250 million in total deal volume. As MarketX now embarks on its latest strategic initiative to enter the Latin America market, I'm extremely excited to announce that we have made 2 key hires to our investor relations team in Miami, Florida. First, Christian Leon, a passionate NFL football fan of the 5-2 New York Jets, joins us from Florida Funders, the most active venture capital fund in the southeastern US, focusing on early stage technology investments. Prior to Florida Funders, Christian worked at JP Morgan, where he provided investment and planning advice to ultra high net worth families, foundations, and endowments of significant wealth. Welcome to the team, Christian.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, to wherever you're joining us from. I'm Christian Leon. I recently joined MarketX as the VP of Investor Relations, and I look forward to hopefully add to the success the group has already achieved, and I look forward to partnering with each of you in the very near future.
Thanks, Christian. Also, we have Karen Pfeiffer, an avid fitness enthusiast who enjoys boxing workouts and has close personal martial arts ties to the Gracie family, the creator of Jiu-Jitsu and the UFC. She joins us most recently from Warren, Brazil, one of the most promising fintech companies in Latin America, where she was the head of global business strategy and structured their international private wealth management and trading platform. Karen has been working in the investment industry her entire career, has significant experience opening new markets, and has most recently specialized in Brazil. It's great to have you on the team, Karen.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much, MarketX team. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to help our investors.
Great. So on today's agenda, Cathryn, literally from the road, will discuss insights gained from her recent travels and meetings with prominent founders and other investors in the Web3 and blockchain space. That will dovetail nicely into Cal Osterman from our deal team discussing our latest investment opportunity in Chainalysis, a developer of crypto investigation and compliance software to protect the junction between finance and the decentralized internet. If you have an interest in any of these deals, others displayed on our platform, or would like additional information on private venture-backed technology investments, please contact us at invest@marketxventures.com. I'll now turn it over to you, Cathryn.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate everyone joining us today. I know we've changed the schedule quite a few times, so appreciate you guys joining. Today, I'm going to go over some of the new changes in crypto and Web3. I believe many of you here have spent some time looking at the space. So without further ado, let me just walk through some of my learnings. Last 2 weeks, we were in Bogota, Colombia, and some of our team members participated in DevCon, which is one of the largest developer-focused conferences. And this year, it was held in Colombia, Bogota. This conference basically brings together the top engineering forces from around the world. We've seen folks who build Aave, Polygon, in the Ethereum Foundation, many of the largest developer networks in Europe, Asia, and also US to Latin America. So this also showcases the importance of decentralization and the power of decentralized finance in developing nations such as Colombia, Brazil, and many other Latin American countries. First of all, I would just like to highlight what are some of the key themes: decentralization, especially institutional adoption of crypto. So the first theme is, how do we build a better Web 3.0 system that provides financial access to the underbanked? Some of the examples are streaming payments in Latin America. Second is about on-chain credit underwriting. We look at how to create open credit access, which serves as alternative data points for folks in, for example, Africa, Latin America, and also the creation of synthetic tokens, which is a novel way of creating decentralization investing in securities via smart contracts, which will, get rid of the middleman. So imagine a kid in Africa that's purchasing tokenized Alibaba shares in a fractionalized way. So these are the new ways that we see Web3 is really changing the financial world. In fact, one of the most exciting projects we heard is the Singapore Stock Exchange that's looking to basically create their own tokens that represent tokenized securities. Over the last 10 years, we've seen, the stock exchange world has been stagnant, and this provides a great standpoint. With regulation becoming more and more clear, we can see that folks are either tokenizing assets through SPVs or they're creating synthetic tokens, trading it through the NFT form. This is a seamless way to help create a bigger distribution, which allows folks, for example, from around the world to invest in shares that are listed in the stock exchange in Singapore, in South Africa. These are what we call the Web 2.5 approach. Whatever they do, we can create more liquidity amongst liquid private investments, but also in the public space, so everyone around the world to invest in companies that are localized. Lastly, I would like to talk about, what's interesting in the compliance analytics world, which case my colleague Callum will talk about Chainalysis, which is one of the companies that's been outperforming in the world of blockchain-based compliance analytics, which provides a complex financial reporting system for many of the companies in the Web3 world. And also many of you probably have heard a little bit about zero knowledge proofs, which is a revolutionary technology that's going to really solve the scaling issue in Web3. Today, I think a lot of them still think of it as a technology that's incubated in Israeli universities, looking to, see how this technology is really going to transform this entire industry. A little bit of snippets of information we can, kind of share with you. How do we isolate personal data from, your digital identity? Today, many of folks that are worried about privacy, in the future, in the Web3 world, you can have the service providers to verify your unique individual information through KYC as long as you achieve a certain FICO score. They don't really need to know your exact score, but they can actually help you identify whether you can get a credit card or not. Information such as new age banking, blockchain service. How do we create custodian staking services that can cater to a larger audience? So with that, I would like to also spend this time to see if you guys have any questions regarding STOs, which is securitized token that represents, either shares of a publicly listed company or private token, nice company shares. So in this area, a lot of regulation has been passed in the last year or so, with certain jurisdictions such as Switzerland, UAE, and also even in the Kingdom Saudi Arabia, which I am currently in. I am in Riyadh this week for FII, which is the Crown Prince's Initiative for Future Investment Initiative, focus on, anything from development in anti-aging to infrastructure play, transportation, seafood, all the way to crypto blockchain being one of the biggest topics we discussed here at this conference. One of the interesting issues that we discussed here is how the government adoption of crypto. So in fact, the Saudi Arabian Kingdom has passed a new policy earlier this month on the 4th regarding businesses that are looking to utilize tokenization for real world assets. So these are all new policies that can, really drive the adoption of institutional crypto. We are looking at few areas, one of which being tokenizing private assets, such as shares of Neuralink, such as shares of Discord, OpenSea. On the other hand, we also see quite a few companies now focus on liquid assets in real estate, in arts. OpenSea obviously is a great example of how art can be traded as a liquid asset. couple months ago, I believe, we also saw an island in the Bahamas, Exuma, being tokenized, and people use it as a time sharing, way of like spending time on the island. And then lastly, I believe end of last year, we have the tokenized DAO for the golf course. So they create a golf DAO, which allows people to buy a piece of the golf course in Florida. So many of these developments can show, the quick adoption of crypto in this world. And we are very excited to be operating in a institutional crypto world by tokenizing private assets. So if you're ever, curious about how you can use your USDT and USDC to purchase shares of these private companies, please check out Infinity Finance, our crypto platform, which allows you to buy private shares with your existing crypto.
Any key takeaways from meetings that you had out at FII regarding anything related to kind of tokenizing real estate or assets out in that part of the world that might be worth noting here?
Yeah, actually, one of the most interesting comments I received was that even PIF, which is a government fund, and also many of the local VCs talked about, if you talk to any millennial, Saudi boy, everyone has bought some crypto. That's how quickly adoption has really reached a certain point in the side of the world. Also, for example, Borrowing operated Ring.com and also Midchains, which is UAE-based trading platform. They have all experienced tremendous success in this region due to the regulatory advancement. The government has taken, very, I would say, open mind when it comes to crypto adoption. With STOs, this is an area that not that many people have experienced, but we have interacted and talked to many of the innovators, such as Telegram. The Telegram founders are actually quite excited about this area, which is also very encouraging to see, large adoption from payments to now investing in private and public stocks.
But I think probably best now to turn it over to Cal, who I think has a nice picks and shovels play to discuss within crypto and blockchain.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for that. So I think everybody here, and I can speak for everybody here is especially delighted to be talking about this space that we think is especially interesting today in ways that are nuanced and not necessarily very obvious for somebody who has just a very general understanding of the sector as a whole. So when we talk about Web3 and crypto currently, we're all aware of the winter that's currently taking place. Bitcoin's down 60%, Ether down a similar number as well. And we've seen capitulation of stable coins like Terra Luna and falls in the DeFi market as well. And so how could we possibly find opportunity in such a market? And we think that what compliance offers is a very interesting risk-reward profile that's not necessarily dependent on the factors that other crypto exposure is relied upon as well. But just before we go into that, what's also worth noting from my perspective as well is that in many of these kind of similar instances in the past of crypto winters, we've seen very interesting innovation and disruption take place at these points in time, including kind of the likes of OpenSea being launched in 2018 at a point where Bitcoin and Ether were struggling in similar ways to how the market is right now. So from our perspective, we think that there's huge amounts of innovation and disruption likely taking place just from looking at history. And we also think it's probably the case as well that compliance offers the opportunity for a very different and nuanced way of accessing exposure to crypto moving forwards as well. So when we look at compliance and the industry, it's in the early years in 2017, we saw the case being that scams were the largest way of illicit addresses moving blockchain. And that still is the case, but we've seen expansion of new bad activity, including stolen funds. And that's especially important for the things we're talking about today. And then darknet activities, completing illegal activities and financing those through the blockchain. That's also remained resilient as a way of moving blockchain through illicit activity. And so today, when we look at the amount in 2021, even, we saw $14 billion worth of cryptocurrency received by illicit addresses. And this is a problem for governments and also financial institutions who are forced to confront this and deal with it. And this hasn't slowed by any means. And when we talked in the beginning of how Bitcoin and Ether have seen pretty drastic drawdowns in their price this year, by no means has that resulted in bad actors slowing their activity. What we've seen, in fact, is that October of this year has seen a massive increase, the biggest month ever for hacking activity. $780 million has been stolen from DeFi protocols over 11 different instances in just this month. So by no means has the slowdown in the crypto market as a whole reduced the illegal activity and the use of the blockchain for bad purposes. So what are governments doing to confront this? What's their response? Well, I think it's pretty clear that there's been a very unified response across the world, actually. And we can take the United States as an example that pretty much exemplifies how most jurisdictions are attempting to confront the problem. So in 2020, the Congress passed a law that essentially pulled within the scope of the Bank Secrecy Act, which of course forces financial institutions to adhere to KYC and other protocols. It pulled within that scope cryptocurrency businesses and other businesses that deal with virtual and digital assets being moved on through their business as well. And so now the result of that is that the likes of the Coinbase or whoever it might be, any other kind of exchange, is forced to know exactly who is trading on their exchange, and then is also required to be aware of where assets have moved to and from. So, and like I said just at the beginning, that's not something that's just unique to the US. It's been seen in the EU, also in Asia as well, and like Singapore, and then of course Australia. So a very unified response across the world to these problems. And so when we look at this market as to how banks are suddenly forced to adhere to these regulations, we find that it's not just financial institutions, it's also law enforcement and financial regulators and intelligence services who are in need of services that can essentially determine who is acting on the blockchain and what their purposes are. And then in the private sector, we've seen crypto firms suddenly needing to adhere to these regulations as well, in addition to fintech companies and blue chip banks and insurance companies as well. So how does the market lie at the moment? And so we can see here that there are a number of different players who essentially attempt to help banks and governments with KYC and investigation type services on the blockchain. Notable mentions are Elliptic and TRM, but you can see a massive amount of funding. The majority of funding received in the space has been received by one company called Chainalysis that we're going to go into detail here. And so Chainalysis essentially, in a nutshell, powers investigations, compliance, and risk management tools that are used by banks and fintech firms and governments and law enforcement to essentially manage cryptocurrency movement safely. Chainalysis has worked with law enforcement and regulators in particular who work to disrupt and enforce laws on the blockchain as well. They've seen very notable traction at this point, and whilst we're under an NDA which prohibits us disclosing all of the financials that we have at the moment, what the company have revealed is that they're well on track for an ARR over $100 million at the moment. And so the traction has been very good, and we've seen a huge number of very largest law enforcement and banks in the world, law enforcement agencies and banks adopting the services they offer. And so how does their exposure lie at the moment? And so you can see here on the pie chart on the left-hand side, governments represent the majority of the revenue that the company produces, and then crypto businesses providing just over a quarter of that. And then on the question of government customers, on the right-hand side, we've seen a massive increase in the number of government customers, as well as the amount of spending they're making in each instance with Chainalysis, as Chainalysis becomes increasingly important to them as they try and tackle money laundering and other problems on the blockchain. So at this point in time, we're very encouraged by Chainalysis financials and fundamentals, but there's also value, we believe, in the business model itself. And we think it's very nuanced and offers a network effect that we think should see the Chainalysis maintain its competitive position for years to come in this growing market. So what do we mean by that? And so we've given an example here that the company provided publicly that details how customers use the platform and the value they have in being part of Chainalysis' largest data map within the industry. So in this example here, we had a very simple case of a bank account being taken over by bad actors. Those bad actors then moved the monies to Bank B, and then from Bank B, that account then moved those funds from there to a cryptocurrency exchange. And from that exchange, the funds were deposited in three separate wallets. Now, what's interesting about this case is that all three businesses who were affected by this action were all part of Chainalysis' data network. And so what they were able to do was they were able to be notified ahead of time that the funds they were receiving were from cases of the hacking and were illegally obtained. Chainalysis then constructs this data map, as you can see on the right-hand side, and knows where funds have then been deposited. And then what Chainalysis did was it located the illegally obtained funds and highlighted 3 separate wallets that the funds have now been held in. From that point on, Chainalysis then worked with law enforcement to seize back those funds and return them to the original bank account. That's what we believe is the value being part of Chainalysis data map, where you're not just being given software and services by the company, but you're also getting you're also being part of a network of moving funds that all rest upon Chainalysis, and so you're aware of when funds have come to you that have been illegally obtained, and therefore you need to do something about. So we think there's huge value in the company, and we're going to in future weeks we're going to be doing a lot more work in discussing the company and going into more details on its business model, its financials. But that's just a quick snapshot of the company and where it stands at the moment.
Thank you, Cal. Appreciate that. Again, do we have any questions for Callum? I actually got one question, Cal. As you kind of think about the total addressable market now in terms of where it is and what kind of CAGR do you think it's kind of expanding at, and as you look at and think about Chainalysis's market share, I mean, are they continuing to be a share gainer here, or how do you think about their revenue opportunity expanding over the next kind of 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, of course. So I think what's really interesting about Chainalysis is that they've initiated a land and expand model in the United States, where they essentially went to federal agencies and they initiated very attractive and very excellent service. And what that then resulted in was them allowing them to access smaller agencies in different states around the country as well. And now we're seeing them growing into parts of Asia and looking to kind of work with governments both on a federal and a state level there as well. So the TAM itself is large and there are huge opportunities outside of the US for growth. It's very hard to kind of pinpoint a TAM for Chainalysis because a lot of it rests upon on the expansion of cryptocurrency businesses, and also we've seen massive expansion in the size of the contracts that governments have with the company itself, and so we've seen government customers come to Chainalysis and then drastically increase the amount of usage they have in the platform as well. So the market itself is huge and growing, but it's very difficult to kind of pinpoint one number at this point.
I appreciate that. So we're coming up on the bottom of the hour here. Just want to open it up once more. If anyone has any questions for Cal on Chainalysis or Cathryn on Web3 or blockchain or any of the fabulous meetings she's had over the last several weeks as she's been traveling the globe. I think we have one question here. This is from Giant. Are there areas beyond Chainalysis that we are considering within Web3 and blockchain?
Is the question beyond compliance that Chainalysis is considering?
Yes. Oh,
sure. Okay. So I think the perspective of Chainalysis at the moment is they've got this huge expanding market where you've got banks and insurance firms who are increasingly forced to deal with this problem of illegally obtained and moved funds across the blockchain. And so whilst that they've made significant strides in the market already, most banks and other very established financial institutions haven't adopted softwares as of yet to deal with the problem. So they've got a huge amount of expansion to take place, and from our perspective, we're pretty happy with them concentrating on this vertical because there's a huge kind of growth runway to go. Thousands of banks, thousands of government agencies around the world that they have as potential client customers, and we wouldn't want them to kind of dilute their focus at the moment while that growth opportunity still exists. And one thing that we would stress is that what we've seen from their financials is the fundamentals in terms of their unit economics and then also their ability to grow have been very, very strong, and actually unit economics have been expanding in strength over time. So we're very comfortable with them growing at this pace and then also kind of getting better operationally at doing so as well. So we're pretty confident in the strategy of them concentrating on this at the moment.
Great, thank you. Well, it's now 2:30 p.m. here Eastern. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, or really if you have an interest in any of the deals on our platform, please feel free to contact us at invest@marketxventures.com. And we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you everyone for joining.